in order to allow other people to view it if they weren't able to make it this evening. And Marcy, go ahead and start the slide deck while I give some welcome remarks. Good evening and welcome to those of you who are able to attend this evening to talk about the state's new independent study option that they are allowing for the 21-22 school year. I'm Jeff Baer, Superintendent of Los Altos School District, and we're going to walk you through a few slides and then allow some time for questions to be asked and respond to with answers if we can, or if we don't know the answer, we will find it out and get back to you. I want to, in advance, thank our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, Sandra McGonigal, and our Director of Student and Staff Services, Aaron Green, both of whom will more or less be running point on this particular initiative for the 21-22 school year. Go ahead, Marcy. So we want to start by just letting you know what we're going to be looking at this evening and give you some background information about what to expect for this school year in our in-person format. And then we'll talk a bit about independent study, registration for that independent study program. And then, as I said earlier, some time for questions and answers. All right, next. So just some words about our plans for the coming school year in person. We have protocols. We will continue to have protocols in place that are by and large second nature to our teachers, to our staff, to our administrators on campus and at the district office. We as a school district brought students back on campus in late September of 2020 and have been serving students on campus safely since that time. We really do have that necessary experience to execute on a safe return to campuses, continued return to campuses for our students. So we really look forward to that. I think it goes without saying, but I want to assure you we adhere strictly to all of the changing state public health orders and local public health orders. Generally speaking, Santa Clara County is deferring to the orders provided by California Department of Public Health for the most part. Basically, this is going to involve students and staff continuing to complete a daily symptom screener before coming to campus. I think you probably remember this if you were with us last year, the OK to Reopen app, where each morning families report their child's condition. And if someone forgets, we will give a call and check in on that. It's critical. Part of our success last year was ensuring that anyone who is not feeling well, who has symptoms, errs on the side of caution and stays home. That really helped to keep us safe last year. Students and staff will be required to mask indoors unless they're eating or drinking, or if they have some kind of a documented medical exemption, but we are requiring mask wearing indoors for everyone. We also know from last year and research that has been done during this time that ventilation, daily cleaning of our classrooms, and hand hygiene are all key to successful operation as well. And we have all of those protocols well in hand. Our ventilation systems continue to be checked and monitored actually on a minute-to-minute basis centrally to understand what the flow of air is in each classroom. Next slide. As I said, we have a tremendous record of success almost for a full year now. We are able to quickly isolate cases that we find out about and notify those involved, notify the Santa Clara County Public Health Department, and follow all of the quarantining protocols that are required. we had very few cases in our schools last year. We had just about 40 identified cases, and that's among students and or staff. But we didn't have outbreaks in our schools, right? Even though we had 40 cases identified, we had no school outbreak. We had no school closures due to this. We really were able to, again, quickly isolate and operate safely. I think it's important to recognize that our schools really do mirror our community. This is a community that's highly vaccinated. This is a community that has low COVID case counts, and consequently, our schools are really no different. Next slide. So the guidance for 2021-22 school year from the California Department of Public Health. As I said earlier, we're going to be checking symptoms and staying home when sick. There is updated quarantining and isolation protocols based on whether or not you're vaccinated. As I said, mask wearing is going to be required indoors. We will continue with, and our students are so good with this, with hand washing and hand hygiene practices coming in and out of recess, coming in and out of lunch, especially times like that. We'll be following all the cleaning and disinfecting protocols that are in place. I already spoke about ventilation, and we will certainly look, teachers will look for those opportunities to be outdoors when weather, space, and time allow. And we will continue to be focused on identifying those cases of COVID and isolating them so that we don't have those outbreaks in the schools. Next slide. I'm going to hand off to Sandra, but just a quick word. I do know this can be an unnerving time for many. But we really believe, and we think we demonstrated last year, that our students will be best served in person with us. But that being said, we will have an independent study program available for those students who have that medical need. And Sandra will be talking a bit more about that. So Sandra, handing off to you.
Great, thank you. Well, I know everybody's here to hear about what this option entails, and just wanted to highlight the differences a little bit between this year and last year. So last year we were required by the state to provide a distance learning option. As you all probably know, we started our virtual school, our online owls, and had really great success with that program. Towards the end of the year, it was clear that the state was not going to allow a distance learning option. And through AB 130, the focus is on an independent study option for families with some caveats in there. So we'll go into that. The biggest being it's really intended for students who have a medical reason around why they cannot safely return to in-person school. So that is an important difference. Last year you had, as a parent, a preference or an option. This year it's a little more clear about what the intention for that independent study program is. So we will go over the details. Next slide, please, Marcy. So we have spent some time this summer determining the best way to serve our students who require an independent study option. We know that our in-person program is an excellent program, and we're hoping to serve all of our students within that in-person program, but we did select Stride Learning Solutions, a third-party group who's been in business for quite some time, to provide our independent study option. They have a proven track record. They're working with many school districts around our county and neighboring counties. So we feel really solid that what they will be able to offer our families who have that need for their child, that our students will be well served. Next slide. So I want our families to think about whether or not independent study is right for their particular child. So as I already said, it's really an alternate or alternative solution for students whose health or medical condition is at risk. This is not for students and families who just prefer a distance learning option. It's important to note that there is a heavy, and we'll get into this, combination of both synchronous and asynchronous time, but it is called independent study for a reason and not distance learning. So it is very heavy on the asynchronous. We will be meeting through STRIDE our minimum requirements that are laid out in AB 130, and we'll go through what those are as well. An important participant is that parent or caregiver who's really going to serve as what STRIDE refers to as a learning coach. And it's really somebody who's going to help guide the daily work of the student, the child at home. Typically, this is a parent. I know last year, several of our families might have had a pod teacher or something like that. So, but typically it's a parent, and that role of learning coach, and we'll get into what that entails, is a requirement up to 6 hours a day, depending on the independent level of your individual child. And then because your child, you're saying, sorry about my dog here, because your child cannot participate in in-person school, that also means that they cannot participate in other in-person activities, such as our sports program in our upper grade and junior high schools, any competitions, activities, performances, all of those pieces are not allowable under AB 130. So when you choose independent study, you really are independent from your school. Next slide, please. So it's chunked a little bit. We'll talk about TK through 3rd grade. The requirements are different for these grade levels as opposed to our upper grade levels. So in TK 3rd grade, I'm going to go from the bottom up because you can see that role of learning coach is really important. That learning coach parent is going to help the child access the instruction for the day, the materials. They're going to possibly prep materials, or at least ensure that the materials are on hand and ready. You're going to be checking your child's progress throughout the day, and really ensuring that your child is doing the work that has been assigned to them. And that is the asynchronous instruction. So the learning platform, and I have some screenshots coming up, but the learning platform is very intuitive and very student friendly and very learning coach friendly, and really guides you throughout the day of what's required for both instruction and deliverables and what work students need to turn in. And then in TK through 3rd grade, AB 130 requires some daily synchronous instruction. There are no defined time limits. It just states that it has to be daily live instruction. So our TK through 3rd grade students will meet with one of their STRIDE certificated teachers and be a part of either a full classroom online, or perhaps have a one-on-one or be a part of a small group. So TK through 3rd grade, every day, there will be a bulk of asynchronous work and some time for daily live instruction. Next slide. In 4th through 8th grade, the statute of AB 130 is a little bit different, and you'll see the big difference up top there. Once again, it's a mostly asynchronous program through STRIDE's platform. And then AB 130 requires what is known as a daily live interaction. So this is not instruction. This is a way for students to stay connected to their school experience. So it could be a wellness check, it could be an attendance check, it could be some type of instructional check-in, but it's really that time to just have a daily check-in pinpoint with our students who are working through independent study. In 4th through 8th grade, AB 130 calls for weekly synchronous instruction, noting that our 4th through 8th graders are more independent than our TK3 students. And we certainly learned that last year. I know our families did as well. So that's kind of the outline of the two different grade bands. Next slide, Marcy. It's important to note some information about specialized support. So if a child has an IEP or a 504, before enrolling in independent study, there needs to be an IEP or a 504 meeting. So we ask that you reach out to either the special education department or our director of student and staff services to arrange a meeting, an IEP or a 504 meeting, to really talk about the needs of the specific child and whether or not independent study is a right fit. The accommodations within an IEP or a 504, and I'll show you some of them in a moment, are really provided through the Stride platform, if possible, and our specific services that a child might have as part of their IEP would still be provided through our staff. When we think of, I don't have a slide for this, but when we think of our English learners will also get accommodations and supports through the platform, and along with their designated ELD, English language development. So most, if not all of that, can be delivered through the platform, but we'd have to look on a case-by-case basis. Next slide. One of the reasons why we selected Stride is we share a great philosophy around hands-on learning. And so every student who's enrolled in independent study will receive a 30 to 50 pound box of learning materials for the entire school year. These include books, novels, depending on your grade level, full science kits, workbooks, lots of hands-on math manipulatives, all the things that a student will need. So not all of the work is on the screen, and there's some time to dive into offline work as well. So that's something I know that our parents appreciated last year, was getting away from the screen. And so we felt that that was important for this year as well. Next slide. So within the platform itself, progress is monitored. It's something that I will be looking at from our end to make sure that students are performing and making growth. But within the system and the platform itself, Stride offers 3 benchmark assessments in reading, just like we do. You may be familiar with our Fontes and Pinnell reading benchmark assessment. They use a very similar assessment that actually speaks the same language. So we'll get some benchmarks to see whether or not students are making progress in that way holistically in reading. And throughout the different subject areas, there are gap assessments built into each learning module. So they could be little quizzes and different performance tasks and performance assessments. And through these gap assessments, the system itself will be able to differentiate practice for students. And this includes in math and reading and writing, actually. And then it also allows the teacher to assign some targeted practice to fill in some gaps that may be missing that are noted through these particular assessments. So as I said, I will be looking closely. I know our special education department will be looking closely as well for students who have an IEP and may be enrolled in independent study. Next slide. So I thought it would be important to kind of get conceptually to be able to see what it looks like. So this is actually a second grade portal, or the second grade portal. Students in the primary grades have the ability to kind of customize their world, so they can change their background and choose their avatar and all those nice little things that make kids feel excited. And then you can see on the left there that there are a few different tabs. And if you're familiar with some other learning platforms, they all have some things in common. So here we're under the courses tab. This particular second grader, you can see, is enrolled in the 4 core courses. So all of our students will be enrolled in math, English language arts is ELA, science, and a social studies history. They will also have a fitness or PE course, along with either an art or a music. We're still determining what those course offerings, kind of that one special for our elementary students may be. You'll also notice here that Stride provides kind of an introduction to online learning, and that's for students. And there is one for that learning coach as well. So here you can see the courses. Students would click into any individual course to get some more information. Next slide. So the next little docket down from course is the individual plan. So the certificated teachers through Stride who are getting to know their students are assigning daily and weekly work. So here you can see the lessons for the day. You can see, you know, it looks like this is probably one lesson in a couple of the different core classes. So this is really a independent, go at your own pace type of program, knowing that you need to be making progress. So it's not doing school. There is still expected daily school with hours logged and assignments turned in. But students might choose to start with their social studies and then get into their math and come back for their English language arts later in the day. This is where some of that learning coach support for our primary students especially will be necessary. And then up at the top there, you can see the Class Connects. This is one of the daily meets with the teacher. Class Connect is, and I'll show you in a moment, but Class Connect is the online classroom where teachers interact or students interact with their teacher. So this particular student has a required meeting from 2:30 to 3, but we'll see some other examples as well. On the left-hand navigation, you can also see a messages tab. So it's very easy for students to message their teacher, or the teacher might message the student in a big red dot, just like your email pops up. So that's an easy way for people to communicate with between the system. And then there's a resource tab, which I think I might have an image later coming up. Next slide. So here we have more of an upper grade. This is a 7th grade, and I believe the 4th through 8th grade portal looks this way, a little less primary and a little more sophisticated, but they have very similar functions. So you can see that this child is enrolled in a World Art A and B course, a Language Arts 7, a World History course, a health course, etc. So we will be sure that we are enrolling students in courses that closely match our expectations, and especially around mathematics when we get into our upper grades where we have some students in a more accelerated pathway, that they will be assigned that course that they are intended to be within. And we will have a few options for students around their elective course as well. So they will take the 4 core, English, math, history, science, plus a PE health course and an elective, so 6 courses. Next slide. And so you can see when a student pops into a course, what's required today. This is math, and you can see that this student has, it looks like 2 assignments on the left there that are due today with the timestamp of 11:59 p.m. And on the right, you can see the events. So there are some required live times with the math teacher throughout the week where the student will be expected to attend, and again, marked from that teacher with attendance. So when a student just goes right into their assignment and gets the instruction and is able to complete that assignment and turn it in and get credit. Next slide. So Class Connect, I mentioned, this is the online kind of virtual classroom for independent study. So similar to, you know, kind of their own custom platform, but similar to a Google Meet. It contains a digital whiteboard where teachers might be demonstrating or students might be showing some of their work. It's able to be recorded, so teachers could send out notes to students or reminders of the instruction that happened. Students can share their screen to show work with their teacher. There are breakout rooms, there are chat functions, all of those great things for that live instructional time. But it is, again, called Class Connect. Within the system, each day there are required times for the little ones, at least weekly required times for the older ones, but also plenty of optional times, office hours, group connects, where students, if they need some live support, that is available to them. Next slide. Within the system, as we know, all learning requires good feedback. So there is a whole system in place for students to get feedback from their teacher in a timely manner. They actually, you can see on that lower right-hand side, like we expect you to actually read the feedback. I know some of our teachers, especially our upper grade English teachers, sometimes bash their heads in because kids won't read the feedback that their teachers give them. So teachers will ensure that kids are reading that feedback and following up with what that feedback asks for from our students. Next slide. Resources, lots of resources embedded into the system. So we talked about Class Connect, which is the interactive online classroom. Within an individual student portal, on the resource tab are two important, in my mind, two more than the third, but there is a tool called Big Universe, which has thousands, like I think close to 20,000 leveled readers for students and teachers. Once we get that reading level, teachers, the classroom teachers in Stride will assign students books that really are at their just right reading level. That's in addition to the actual paper books that they might receive in their box. And then students can, of course, select their books from a vast library. So that's a great resource. I'm trying to, the other one there that is called Go is kind of a virtual encyclopedia, which is a great tool, and Engage is a way to connect with others around interesting topics. So those are some of the online tools available to students. There's all sorts of differentiated reading tools. We'll talk about supports in a moment. They build gamification to really keep students engaged. So you might be doing a grammar skills lesson as part of your writing assignment for the day. And there's gamification built in so students can earn little coins and what have you. And of course, live quizzes, so students can check their own progress as they are learning. And that's really important because kids need to be getting that frequent feedback from both the system and of course from the teacher. Next slide. Really some interesting student supports, which is great. And I think of our students who require accommodations, but these supports are available to all students. So I'll just have you look above that little arrow image there. Anytime a student has to read a text, students can highlight the text and it will read for them. That's that first button on the left. There's also a tool called Focus, which means if you have a whole screen of text, Focus will block out all of the text and just show you the line. And you can move it as you're reading, or you can move it as it's reading to you. There's, of course, a definition. You can click on a word and it will define it for you. You can translate it into almost maybe 100 languages. The list of languages was really incredible. And then you can customize your own settings, change your font size and all of that. So these are really great tools for our students, knowing that they're going to be more independent in this round than they were last year. And so I know last year, many of our primary teachers ended up reading a lot of the things into our learning plans and what have you, because we know that our students who are in kindergarten, for example, have very limited reading as they're just learning how to read. So it's great that they have this tool, and the Learning Coach parent will help students really learn how to use these tools and figure out what works best for each child. Next slide. And then equally importantly, built into the system are little take a break reminders. We do not want students online for 6 hours a day. It's too much. So once students get into a lesson, and into their different courses and lessons, the system itself will do an automatic take a break. So again, that little play button, if the student was unable to read, press play and it will read exactly the text that is there. But it really gives the student a reminder to get away from the screen, go get some fresh air, go move their body, take a potty break, take a snack, whatever you need, and then come back and get going. So I really like that feature as well. Next slide. All right, so those are kind of the big, how the system looks. Also important to note, I can't remember if I already said this, but our learning coaches actually have their own portal. So every child has their portal within Stride, but a learning coach, as kind of the manager of their child's education, has their own portal to go in and to be able to see on the back end if students were taking quizzes within a series of lessons today. You can see how your child performed. You can see the time on task. You can build out the plan for your child for the week or communicate with the teacher in that way. So it's a really nice feature for our learning coach parents as well. So as you are considering whether or not you want to enroll your child in independent study, I do want you to think about these things. One, you want to ensure that you believe your child's health would be put at risk from attending in-person schooling, that you have the time or you have a system in place or a plan in place to have a learning coach available for your child. Again, this is not virtual school from last year. This is a mostly asynchronous program with some synchronous live time and support. You want to think about how well your child learns independently. Because there's not going to be as much. There is certainly direct instruction, but not in the form of a live human. So we want to make sure that your child can do that independently. And if your child had some time last year in virtual school or through distance learning, you would want to reflect on how well they were able to function, and were they able to make the expected growth last year during that time. If your child has an IEP or a 504, again, before you would sign up, you would have to make sure that you've had that meeting with the special ed department to amend the IEP, and that's an IEP team decision. And then if your child is a very beginning English learner and has very limited English, I would ask that you reach out to me because I want to make sure that that we have a plan in place, because I believe it would be a great challenge for a very beginner newcomer student with insufficient English language. Next slide. So how this is going to work a little bit. So again, when you choose independent study for your child, and I'll share the application process, you will essentially be opting out of the in-person program and enrolling in independent study. It's a separate program. The classes within Stride will be comprised of students from other schools and districts around California. It's not just an LASD program, and we wanted to be transparent and make sure that you understood that. But it should be California-based. You can transfer back to in-person learning, and AB 130 tells us that we need to be able to transfer you back within 5 days, but we want you to know that we cannot guarantee that you will be able to go back into the class that we had expected your child to go and start the year in person, and we can't even guarantee that you would be able to get back into your individual school. So that is an important consideration for you to think as you determine whether or not independent study is the right thing for your child. Of course, we will provide a device, a Chromebook, and an internet access if it's needed, and that will be a part of the agreement that we go into together. Next slide. So if you want to register for independent study, we're asking that our applications are due this Friday. We have a lot of back-end work to do. So the link I believe was in Jeff's last newsletter. The principals have sent out a newsletter with the link to the application, and I created a tiny URL here, tinyurl.com/LASD study. So we ask that you complete that form. You have the right to ask for some consultation. So if you would like to talk with an educator, you're going to reach out to Erin Green, our Director of Student and Staff Services. And together within the first 30 days of the program, we're going to complete a written agreement, because there are lots of stipulations within AB 130 that we have to make sure everybody is aware of. And so that will be a part of the required written agreement between the district and the families who select the independent study program option. Next slide. Voila.
All right, so we are happy to take questions and try to come up with answers for you as well on this. So you can raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll go down the line getting to those. So Kelsey Cole, you can go ahead and unmute.
Hi, thanks. I'm currently waiting on some diagnoses for my kid. And so I don't actually know at this point how safe or not it is for him to be at school. Can I enroll him later if the diagnosis changes?
Yes, the answer is yes to that question, Kelsey.
Thank you.
Yep. And is it Gmail? Go ahead and unmute.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for providing this detailed introduction about this independent study platform. So my question is, it's been emphasized a few times that this is designed for the kids whose health will be at risk for in-person study. So my question is, when do this application, what kind of medical document we need to provide to prove this point?
So we are not requiring you provide a medical document. This is the state's been clear in the legislation of AB 30 that it's the parent's determination. You don't have to provide a doctor's note or anything like that. That is left to the parent.
I see. Thank you very much.
Yep, no problem. All right, Megan Cravens.
Thank you. So my question was, during the presentation, it sounded like if you have an IEP, that you said we would serve the student, and I would just wanted clarification. Is it LASD that would do the pullout services that go along with an IEP, or is it the independent study school Stride?
Yep, thanks for the question, Megan. I'm going to ask Jennifer Kiker, our Director of Special Education, to respond to that one.
Oh, and then can I ask one other with that, or no? Like I can.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, the second part was just, once my kids are vaccinated, they'll definitely be. I want to have them in person, right away. But I was wondering, you said masked indoors, so I'm wondering if outdoor playtime is masked also. And then when they're eating, I know that Santa Clara County, the public health just put on a meeting today, and they were saying that it's recommended that kids sit 6 feet distant when eating without a mask. And so I was wondering if LASD is following that.
Right. So we will be having kids, excuse me, distancing while eating. That's very similar to what we did last year. But outside masks are going to be optional at recess time. At this point, the caveat I'll always throw in there is, unless there is a change in the health guidance. And with that, I'll also say that I would expect that a significant number of our kids will be wearing masks while playing on the playground, and others won't. So, but Jennifer, I'll let you answer the special education question.
Okay, hi Megan. At this point, this is our first step, right? Is to be able to kind of explain what the independent study option is for Los Altos. And the next step is that we will be following up with an individual. I'll have an individual meeting with each parent, and then we'll have an IEP meeting. The question was around, would we be servicing? If we did feel that as an IEP team that the child could be served through independent study, we would be, our specialists would be the ones providing that support.
Got it. Thank you. And our specialist is the is LASD, right?
It would be Los Altos. It wouldn't necessarily be tied to your home school site, but it would be one of our specialists within Los Altos School District. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, and I'll just say you will hear from us tonight some language that would indicate we're having to work on this. This is something that was really dropped in our laps about 3 weeks ago. So we are having to assemble this pretty quickly. So we are still working on putting together some of these pieces. All right, I'm not sure if it's Baba or Deborah, but go ahead and unmute.
Thank you very much. So I'm Dr. Baba Kofi-Sujana, and I happen to have a doctorate in learning sciences. And I remember in grad school, now admittedly that was 99 to 2005, K-12 had a very bad reputation, particularly with upper management and owners and things they were doing just to get market share. What was the process it went through for the state to pick this vendor? I mean, I haven't kept track of it since 2005, so it's been 16 years, but why choose this vendor?
So we compare, Sandra, maybe you can speak a little bit to this. We compared a number of vendors, but Sandra, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been working with our neighboring school districts to talk about solutions and met with a number of different vendors. So this is the vendor we selected, not a state selected vendor, just to be clear with that. And it looks like, sounding from when I spoke with this group in particular, they really had their stuff together. I believe that they've grown a lot in a very good way. They've divisioned off a lot of their different services and have hired many more people. I was most impressed with both their philosophy, their platform, and what they could deliver. I think it was the best match, I believe, with our kind of core values of what learning looks like.
I guess, Jeff, you're probably on mute, but I did see the unmute button come on my side.
Thank you. I was muted myself. Thank you for recognizing that.
Yeah, so I just have a couple of questions, quick questions. How many kids in a class typically, let's say for a third grade? And the second question is from the initial slides that Sandra, you shared, do I understand that the independent study is really not an option for all kids? Like, let's say if the kid is perfectly healthy, then can we avail this option as well?
So two questions. The class size one, the statute says that we have to closely mirror our district. I can't remember if it's average or there's some calculation, but I would expect that 25 to 30 students in an independent study classroom. And your second question, you will, when we get to the written agreement that is required by the state, you will have to certify that you believe your child's health is at risk to return in person. Again, like Jeff said, there's no documentation, no medical note that we require. And we're really just going on good faith that you're making a choice. But this is not just I prefer independent study. You have to be residing within our boundaries. And so this is not I'm going to go live in Hawaii and I'd like to have my child participate in independent study. This is not that program. This truly is for students who have a worrisome health condition, and it's something that we will be coming back to families and checking in to see if there's been a change. And if we can get them back in school, because that's where we strongly believe students learn best.
All right, Johnny Chung. Oh, there you go.
Hello. Hi. So I mean, at the current state, CDC guidelines also, talking about, like people is not also that who is unvaccinated, at high risk, and at this moment there's no vaccination for the kids under 12. So I'm just curious, and now everyone talking about, like a new guideline about wearing masks, So what is the state, also how can we make sure, now, I mean, the kids under 12, they also at risk as well, right now, because there's no vaccination for them. So how the LASD look at this guideline, this new guideline?
Well, which guideline?
Well, the new study also shows that, the new guideline is about everyone need to wear masks, okay, and also the new study says that people who are unvaccinated is also a higher risk, okay, of getting COVID. So with this new guideline and new information, I mean, what is a state and LSD looking, think
Right.
of?
Yep. So I understand. So what we look at is that we operated all of last year while wearing masks, making sure our classrooms are ventilated, making sure students are washing their hands and we're practicing hand hygiene. And that was when no vaccine was available, right? We had 100% unvaccinated people, students and staff in our schools up until February or so, right? February, March, when people were fully vaccinated. So we're quite confident that by us implementing and really being fastidious about the implementation, but making sure we implement the guidelines, that we are able to create a safe environment for both our students and our staff.
In that case, would that be the enforcement of wearing masks during the break recess? Would that help prevent those? Because that is a guideline being used during the government for that in the past. So that's what prevent any kind of outbreak or anything like that. Because everyone will have a guideline to wear the mask. If we don't have that guideline to a student, then the exposure is going to be higher.
Sure. And I think what I would, my response to that would be that, in following these health orders, they are built upon the experiences that have been gathered over the course of this pandemic. And outdoors is definitely a far less risky venture than indoors with 25 kids and a couple of adults in a classroom. So we'll continue to follow the guidelines of the health experts. It is what has I would say allowed us to be incredibly successful this past year, and I do have the confidence that we will be this year as well. All right, Laura. Oops, sorry about that. There you go.
Hi, good evening. My question is about the timeline for the IEP meetings. We reached out for the meeting and waiting tier on scheduling, and I understand the timeline is this Friday for the registration. So we cannot move forward with the registration, right? So we have to have the IEP meeting first. My daughter has an IEP, and then get authorization and then move forward with the registration.
Yeah, Laura, yeah, we will be reaching out to you to explain that. Yeah, but the registration will inherently be through the IEP process. So this Friday deadline is not necessarily for your daughter.
Okay, great. So perfect. Okay, I was panicking a little bit, but
You're
sounds
okay.
good. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. All right, Emily Pan. 1 second. Emily, I'm gonna have to promote you to a panelist for a moment because it says you have an older version of Zoom. So here we go. Hi, Emily, go ahead and unmute.
Hi, thanks. I have two questions, and one of them is it adequate for a member of the household to have an underlying medical condition that's high risk? My younger son has respiratory underlying conditions, so it's not my daughter herself, it's a younger sibling who also cannot be vaccinated. And then my second question is, what are the school's requirements right now for teachers showing vaccination status, and what is the school's protocol for if a child in a classroom does test positive for COVID? What are the next steps?
Sandra, you want that one?
Yeah, so I'll take the first part and perhaps other folks could chime in on the second part. So yes, I understand another child or somebody else in the home might have an underlying condition. I will just say that written agreement that you're going to kind of consent to is notifying us that your child has a health condition. And again, we don't require documentation, but you're certifying that information. So I think you just need to make the best decision for your family. Do you want to talk about vaccination, Jeff?
Talk about that. So the second part, vaccination. So this is a tricky space here right now that's evolving as we speak. And that is around notification on whether or not someone's vaccinated, whether our employees need to notify us if they're vaccinated. So they're not required by law to notify us because there are health privacy laws in place, but we do ask them that information voluntarily. And our teachers are highly vaccinated. In the mid to high 90% are vaccinated. The third part of your question about, which was essentially about close contacts and quarantining, right? I am going to get back to you on that because I know that has shifted, and I don't know the current information, and both of our nurses have taken this week as vacation in preparation for this year starting. So Ms. Pan, I'm gonna actually, if I could ask you, could you send me an email and I'll make sure that gets answered?
Okay, that would be great. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thank you. All right, and then we have Lauren Robinson. Go ahead and unmute.
Hi, I guess I have two questions following up from the previous question. I was a few minutes late to the call, but are you saying that we have to certify that our child has a medical reason that we wouldn't want them into school? Or it wasn't clear, was her younger child having an underlying condition grant her older child who's also unvaccinated the ability for independent study, or no? I'm confused.
So on the written agreement, one of the boxes you have to check before you sign is that your child has a health condition that prevents them or puts them in harm's way to attend in person. So that is what you are certifying.
Okay. And then I guess my second question, my original question was, I have signed my daughter up for a separate homeschool program that I think it's K-12. So I think it's similar. What are the implications because my goal is if she's vaccinated, if my children are vaccinated, I would like them in person. I had signed up for homeschool, not knowing what Los Altos School District was going to offer this year. Obviously, I'd like to keep her in the district for ease of hopefully putting her back in school. But I guess what are the implications if she doesn't have an underlying medical condition? I do. And she's not vaccinated. Is it better for me to go with the homeschool program or with independent study?
Well, I think you're going to have to really make that determination. What I can tell you is that in either instance, when you're ready to have your children return to in-person, you're either going to transfer from our independent study into one of our in-person schools, or if you've unenrolled and you're homeschooling your child, you would go back and reach out to the fabulous Bridget and our registrar at the district office and re-enroll your child, and we absolutely have a spot.
Okay, so there's no real implications in going back, dependent whichever program we choose.
Yep.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. Ivy.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Yes. My question is regarding how do you actually enforce the proper wearing of the mask when kids are indoor? Because if everybody is in the class, the teacher is teaching, I don't think he or she can just watch how kids wear their masks. And it's not only the kids, even we adults get tired of the mask. You just pull the mask down with the nose exposing outside.
Yeah, we have become quite adept at this. Sandra, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah,
Thank you.
talk. Everyone from our preschoolers through our 8th graders really did an outstanding job of wearing masks. So our teachers set the expectation and served as role models. We know that students need breaks. So anytime a student needed a little mask break, they are welcome to go outside the door, or the teacher might take everybody outside for a little bit of a mask break. But really, teachers have eyes all around their heads, and it's very easy to see when your mask ends up down here. And it's just a quick reminder. We've talked a lot about how we don't want to punish people or make people feel bad because their mask may have slipped, but the expectation is really strong that you will appropriately wear a mask in class at all times. And so our teachers and our students were able to do it. It was pretty incredible. Some of them with 2 masks, if that made them more comfortable.
And I'll also add, these are teachers who are in a classroom with 25 or 30 children. It is in their interest as well that students are wearing masks properly. So they've actually been quite vigilant about it, and successfully so. It's a great question, though.
Okay.
All right, Feng Pan.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, yes. I have a question about the registration deadline for independent study application. So if we wouldn't be able to make a decision before August 6th, can we still register after that date? And if we could, do we follow the same link, or do we send email? What's the process?
So you can register afterwards, but we cannot guarantee that we will be able to start your child on the 18th, which is our first day of school. We really need that lead up time. So your child would remain enrolled in their homeschool in-person class until we could move you over. That window I will put in after Friday. When people try to click on the link, I will try to put in a message that you're going to contact, I think, Erin Green. Does that sound right, Erin? If you would like to enroll in our independent study program at a later time.
I see. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, thank you. All right, is it Sukanya?
Yes, hi, my name is Sukanya. My daughter is currently going into the charter school. So if we were interested in the independent study program, what is the process? Do we have to first register with LASD and then opt in for the independent study? Or, the deadline is pretty soon. And I just learned about this webinar just this afternoon, and luckily I was able to join. But given these tight deadlines, what is the process for us?
Yes, so you would want to contact our registrar, Bridget, tomorrow, and you can just call the district office at 947-1150.
Mm-hmm.
And you would need to register, And then concurrently, you would also put your name in the application for independent study. So that it is as simple as that. And Bridget can tell you about proofs of residency and all of those things that are necessary in order to register.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right, any other questions? We are happy to answer a couple more. I'll remind you that we also take email, so feel free to email with those questions as well, and we'll be happy to answer those. Gavin?
Yeah, hi. So I had two questions. The first is, you mentioned that the live portion of the independent study would be much less than last year's online learning. My daughter's going into second grade. About how much actual live instruction would we expect? That's my first question.
Yeah, so that's a tricky answer. I can say that if going into second grade, your daughter would have daily instruction. I don't have a minutes for you, and I believe because the program is really kind of adaptive and targeted to students, not every child is going to get the same exact amount of live instruction. You know, a child who needs additional support might have some additional required times. I think as a baseline, I would think about 30 to 60 minutes a day. Perhaps it's one of the core courses that there would be a live teaching time within the school day. But again, it is a mostly asynchronous program.
Okay, that makes sense. Second question, I read that there may be combining of grades, and I was just wondering how that would work, because obviously, you know, students in different grades would be studying different material, right?
Yeah, I think the only time we might have a combination of grades is when you think about our upper grade math courses. Sorry about my dog again. So we might have a 7th grader and an 8th grader enrolled in an algebra class, but as a 2nd grader, your child would only be with other 2nd graders.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Gavin, where can I ask, where did you, I'm just trying to figure out maybe where that question came from. Where did you pick up on that grade levels might be combined?
I think, I don't remember. It was either in an email or in the notice you guys sent out. So there was definitely a line in there that I read that
okay,
worried me a little bit, but if it doesn't apply to elementary school, then that's fine.
Great, thank you. We'll take the last question. Will be Erica.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Hopefully you can. So I just have a question about the math, and this would be in regards to a child going into 6th grade. Curious about how Stride would assess the placement for math, or because you were mentioning, you know, especially with that 6th, 7th, that's around when they're going in, and there's such a variety or range. It could be pre-algebra, it could be, you know, whatever it is. How does the independent study assess that?
So they're not actually, I'm placing each student in their course. So we have done math placement. If your child was with us last year, we've done math placement in the spring. I think before the end of this week, maybe Monday, all of our 6, 7, 8 families will be getting a math placement email.
We were with the district previously, but we homeschooled last year just due to COVID concerns.
Okay, then
So
we
haven't had
probably,
this lesson.
through our written agreement meeting, we would probably do some, typically we might ask for a transcript or even do our own assessment to make sure that your child is placed in the right course.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, just take a moment to thank all of you for attending. We know it's a short turnaround and short notice on the meeting. This this is the world in which we are living right now. And I just want to commend you all for doing such a great job getting here. We know it's of high interest, your kids, and they are of high interest to us as well. So we do appreciate your partnership on that. Thanks to everyone who attended as well and answered the questions. So with that, have a great night, and please remember to look back at that link if you are interested in applying. Have a good night.